Every man carries within him the eternal image of woman, not the real woman, but an unconscious ideal that shapes his desire. Carl Jung. Have you ever questioned why certain women leave a lasting impression on men, while others seem to go unnoticed despite their efforts? The reason isn't a lack of charm. There is a profound feminine energy that many never truly access. This energy functions like a powerful elixir, acting on the unconscious level. Carl Jung believed that genuine connection between people does not arise from words or actions, but from an inner meeting of souls that activates ancient unconscious forces. When a woman naturally expresses this archetype, she becomes the embodiment of something a man has longed for, yet cannot articulate. To put it simply, men do not become addicted to the woman herself. They become addicted to the emotional experience she creates. She is both known and unknowable, gentle, yet detached, present, and still unreachable. She is a spiritual tempest that he cannot resist. In this video, I will walk you through 7 hidden layers of feminine energy that ignite a man's primal obsession, not through looks, but through your inner essence. Some of these may surprise you, as they may already live within you without your awareness. Stay until the end, because the final layer will not only make a man yearn for you, it might change how you see yourself. Secret 1. The anima and the awakening of primal emotion. Within the soul of every man exists a feminine image he cannot quite define. This image does not stem from women he has met in daily life, but emerges from deeper layers, from the unconscious, from collective myths, and from the emotional experiences passed down across generations. Carl Jung identified this phenomenon as the anima, the inner feminine counterpart embedded within a man's psyche. It is not a replica of his mother, nor a reflection of past lovers, nor even the stereotypical ideal woman praised by society. Rather, the anima is a deeply emotional blend of symbols, dreams, and longings, composed of softness, intuition, sacredness, and emotional depth. It embodies what the man himself cannot express or hold. When a woman appears in his life who unconsciously mirrors this archetype, something awakens within him that defies explanation. He finds himself pulled not by logic or preference, but by an ancient emotional magnetism. It is not something he chooses. It is something that overtakes him. This is the moment when reason begins to collapse, when logic fades, and what remains is a gravitational pull, raw, unmanageable, and obsessive. Jung explained that once the anima is stirred, a man stops seeing the woman as just a person. She becomes a symbol, a mirror, a reflection of his innermost longing. He doesn't simply fall in love. He craves her not as she is, but as what she seems to awaken within him. The anima often comes alive in women who do not fit into a single mold. They have emotional layers, fluid spirit, and unpredictable essence. They are not always soft nor consistently fierce, but move like water, still and silent one moment, suddenly stirring the next. They embody both serenity and disruption, calmness and power. She may be tender today and direct tomorrow. Mysterious, not because she hides, but because she shows each part of herself as it arises. Like the shifting elements, she can become vapor, ice, or rainfall. Each version is true. None of them contradict the other. She allows herself to be emotionally transparent, yet she retains her inner autonomy. She does not seek men. She is too immersed in the richness of her own being for that. And men drawn to her emotional aliveness approach not to possess, but to glimpse what they do not yet understand. Jung warned that a man who hasn't integrated his own anima may confuse projection for love. He believes he's fallen for her, but in truth he's captivated by a reflection of his inner self projected onto her form. This is why some relationships feel deeply magnetic, but are also filled with confusion and chaos. He isn't loving her essence. He's chasing his own unmet soul through her image. The anima is not called forth by perfection or performance. A woman doesn't need to read Jung or study psychology to activate it. She simply needs to be fully herself, not watered down, not tamed, not rearranged to suit external expectations. It is her complexity, her emotional honesty, her contradictions, and her refusal to be reduced that stirs this ancient recognition. So what does this mean for a woman? How can she awaken the anima, not through manipulation, but by being? The answer does not lie in tactics, charm, or appearance. It lives in a kind of feminine energy that is deeper than all of that. It lives in the following 7 emotional layers, each one capable of evoking something ancient, unconscious, and unforgettable within a man's heart. And once awakened, he cannot return to sleep. Secret 2: emotional self-mastery. While emotional contrast may captivate a man in the moment, it is emotional self-mastery that makes a woman unforgettable over time. This second layer of feminine energy doesn't rely on charm or volatility. It is rooted in a deeper strength, the ability to remain whole, stable, and undiminished, regardless of who enters or exits her life. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this privilege is never handed to us by someone else. It is built from within. A woman who has reached emotional self-mastery does not require a man to feel complete. She doesn't seek validation through romance. She does not base her self-worth on being desired, chosen, or pursued. She knows she is already enough long before anyone else affirms it. She is not waiting to be rescued or redeemed. She nurtures herself on ordinary days, not just in grand moments. Modern psychology refers to this as emotional self-regulation, the capacity to manage and stabilize one's emotions without needing constant external reassurance. Yet in our hyper-connected culture, this is a rare quality. Many are conditioned to seek worth in notifications, attention, compliments, or how desired they are by others. Some women turn relationships into their primary identity, treating a missed message like a personal crisis. But a self-mastered woman feels deeply, loves fully, and even longs intensely without losing her sense of self. She keeps commitments to her own life. She moves her body, finishes her work, keeps learning, connects with friends, explores her passions, and she finds joy not in someone else's affection, but in the experience of her own becoming. This energy is magnetic. It's not demanding, not clinging, not desperate. It is calm, radiant, and inwardly sourced. Jung described this journey toward self-mastery as individuation, the process of peeling away false identities to uncover who you truly are. Only by separating from social roles, family projections, and external demands can one stand in full psychological maturity. When a woman skips this process and dives into love too soon, she risks losing herself in the process. Every glance from him alters her mood. Every delay in response stirs fear. Every compliment makes her rise, and every silence makes her fall. Her heart is no longer in her own hands. But a woman who is individuated, who knows her truth, her desires, her limits, does not place her soul on someone else's altar. She gives love freely, not to be completed, but to be expressed. She is not moved by sweet words alone. She is not swayed by emotional storms. She can love with intensity and presence, yet if the other person turns away, she does not collapse. She may ache, she may grieve, but she stands, because her center has always been her own. Behavioral psychology confirms that what we earn through effort, we value more, and what appears abundant and easily accessible, we often take for granted. A woman who rearranges her life the moment a man calls may feel loving, but she risks becoming replaceable. While the woman who calmly replies, "I'm unavailable right now, but we can meet later," communicates her internal structure. That is not coldness. That is sovereignty. And though he may not say it aloud, he feels the weight of that difference. Self-mastery is more than attraction. It is emotional protection. It shields you from pouring yourself into half-hearted connections. It filters out those who are unsure or unready. It prevents you from overgiving too early or mistaking intensity for intimacy. A woman who can set boundaries, say, no, walk away, or let go without revenge, without collapse, becomes unforgettable. She doesn't repel men. She attracts those who are secure, serious, and self-aware. Men like this recognize the strength of her presence and the quiet grace of her restraint. They don't feel entitled to her. They feel honored by her. Secret 3: Mystery and the Power of Space. Mystery is not about playing games, hiding your emotions, or trying to be distant. It is about what remains undefined, what a man senses but cannot fully grasp. This is one of the most powerful and misunderstood dimensions of feminine energy. In the beginning, many women believed that being open, expressive, and completely transparent is a sign of authenticity. But in the emotional realm, what keeps desire alive is not what is explained, it's what is felt, but never fully solved. Carl Jung called this psychological projection the unconscious act of assigning one's own hidden desires or fears onto another person. When a woman doesn't rush to define herself when she holds back just enough, a man begins to fill in the gaps with his imagination, and in doing so, she becomes more than herself. In his mind, she becomes a reflection of something within him that he hasn't yet understood. She becomes an archetype, a story, a puzzle his soul wants to decode. That's why some men say things like, "I don't even know why I can't stop thinking about her." It's not because of a specific moment or trait, but because she left something unsaid. She created emotional space, and space invites longing. It's not that she kept secrets. It's that she didn't give everything away too soon. She didn't lay out her whole life in the first conversation. She didn't open every emotional door without knowing who stood on the other side. That restraint isn't coldness. It's wisdom, and it's irresistible. Mystery doesn't require silence or manipulation. It simply means that some parts of you are reserved not for hiding, but for sacred timing. Imagine a man asking, "Tell me about your past relationships." You respond gently, "That's something I usually share once we've built a bit more trust." That sentence may seem simple, but it contains an entire world. It signals that your inner world isn't available on demand. And he feels it. He senses a boundary, and with it a deeper kind of respect. In behavioral psychology, the Zeigarnik effect explains that we remember incomplete experiences more vividly than completed ones. When there is no final chapter, the mind keeps returning to the story. When something isn't fully known, it becomes emotionally magnetic. That is the psychology of mystery. And women who tell everything too soon, who explain every feeling, who try to be completely understood from the beginning, they remove the tension that desire needs. Jung believed that mystery is not about being unreadable. It's about being multi-layered. When a woman feels like a journey instead of a destination, a man doesn't just desire her, he yearns for her. He knows there is more to see, more to feel, more to uncover. And because of that, he stays engaged. A truly mysterious woman doesn't manufacture distance. She doesn't hold back to manipulate. She simply honors the timing of emotional intimacy. She doesn't open her soul to someone who hasn't shown they're ready to hold it. She doesn't fear being known, but she values being earned. That discernment becomes an emotional invitation. A mature man will feel it. He will recognize that she is not easily reached, and that if one day she chooses to share her depths, it will be a rare gift. Those seeking ease or surface-level connection may drift away, and that is exactly as it should be. Not everyone deserves access to your sacred self. Mystery, then, is not a tool, it is an energy. And when expressed with emotional integrity, it becomes the echo that keeps him coming back long after the moment has passed. Secret 4, joy that comes from within. Even the most magnetic mystery will fade if there is no light inside you to illuminate it. Mystery alone cannot sustain connection. It must be paired with vitality, a kind of internal joy that asks for no audience. This fourth layer of feminine energy isn't something you project, it's something you live. A woman who embodies this joy becomes captivating, not because she is trying to be seen, but because she knows how to enjoy herself when no one is watching. There is a paradox in human attraction that few truly understand. The more you try to make someone notice you, the more invisible you often become. But the moment you stop trying and start living fully is the moment others can't look away. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And when a woman reaches this level of self-acceptance, she becomes effortlessly radiant. She no longer asks the world to approve of her joy. She claims it without needing applause. Self-generated joy isn't a declaration that you don't need love. It's the quiet, knowing that your life is already filled with meaning. It's the laugh you let out while dancing alone in your kitchen. The song you hum softly while cooking dinner just for yourself. It's the silent excitement over finding the perfect book, or spotting something beautiful on a walk, even if you never share it with anyone. This kind of woman doesn't live to impress. She lives because living well is its own reward. She doesn't seek to be chased, but her presence draws people in. When a man encounters her, he feels drawn to something steady, alive, and entirely her own. She is not waiting. She is not performing. She is simply being. Social psychology confirms this magnetism. People are most drawn to those who exude a calm, inwardly sourced energy, not chaotic, not attention-seeking, but quietly alive. This joy which emerges from being, rather than proving, is the reason people feel safe and intrigued in her presence. She doesn't try to make you laugh, and yet in her company you do. She doesn't strive to be adored, and yet her ease makes her unforgettable. Jung also warned that the unlived lives of parents silently haunt their children. The same applies to relationships. A woman who has denied her joy, who has postponed her own aliveness until someone arrives, becomes emotionally heavy. But a woman who laughs, explores, and expresses, with or without an audience, becomes light, not shallow, but lifted by something internal. A man might be initially drawn to your beauty, but he becomes obsessed when he thinks of how you live. He'll remember the way you threw your head back laughing at a silly meme, the way you talked about your favorite song like it was sacred, the way you danced badly on purpose just to make yourself smile. He won't remember every outfit, but he will remember the spark in your eyes when you spoke of something that mattered only to you. These moments are small, but they are everything, because in those moments he witnesses a woman who has made her own joy a priority. And that is rare. Self-sourced joy also brings emotional protection. When a woman no longer depends on someone else for happiness, she becomes resilient. If he leaves, she doesn't fall apart. She feels the loss, but she continues her life. She still goes to work, still buys fresh flowers, still watches the sky. She has not placed her sense of wonder in someone else's hands. This constancy, this quiet continuation, is what makes her powerful. She isn't pretending to be okay. She simply knows that her life has value whether someone witnesses it or not. And that kind of woman is unforgettable, not because she demands attention, but because she doesn't need it to shine. Secret 5, presence in the moment. Even a woman who radiates joy from within may remain out of reach if she cannot bring her full self into a shared moment. This fifth dimension of feminine energy is often overlooked, yet it carries one of the deepest emotional impacts. Presence isn't about being physically nearby. It's about being fully here, undistracted, attuned, and emotionally awake in real time. Many people today speak, nod, smile, but remain mentally elsewhere. Our minds are split across to-do lists, notifications, and inner commentary. But presence requires silence inside. Not the silence of words, but the silence of attention. Carl Jung believed that wholeness was not achieved through analysis alone, but through an ability to engage deeply with the reality before us. Presence is the bridge between self-awareness and connection. It's the space where your energy aligns with another's in a way that makes time feel suspended. A woman who is truly present isn't performing, advising, or reacting. She is witnessing. She is listening with her eyes, her breath, and her spirit, not just her ears. And in a world saturated with surface attention, this becomes profoundly rare. When a man sits across from a woman who is truly present, he feels more than heard. He feels recognized. He feels that for those few minutes he is not alone in his thoughts or his world. He doesn't need to impress her. He doesn't need to keep the mood light. He can exhale, because she has made emotional room for him without asking for anything in return. Psychology refers to this as empathic resonance, the ability to feel with someone without rushing to fix them. When you sit in silence with someone's pain or excitement or confusion without judgment or interruption, they begin to reveal what even they didn't know they were carrying. This is not about being a therapist. It's about being human without distraction, and yet this quality is vanishingly rare. So many people offer their words, but not their attention, their advice, but not their patience. But the woman who offers presence becomes unforgettable, not through effort, but through depth. She becomes the emotional pause in a man's hectic world. She becomes the memory of calm he cannot recreate elsewhere. When a man shares his stress, uncertainty, or inner doubts, he often doesn't want solutions. He wants to be allowed to speak freely. If you jump in with, "I've been through the same thing," or "you should do this," you may unintentionally close the space. But if you simply stay, if you listen fully, you create emotional safety. And emotional safety is one of the deepest, rarest needs we all carry. Presence doesn't require perfect communication skills. It doesn't require clever replies or long conversations. It requires something much more difficult, the willingness to remain still, to let the silence linger, to let someone feel all the way through what they are saying. When a man experiences this level of presence, it rewires something inside him, not because you've done something to him, but because he remembers who he is in your presence. That is why presence is not only attractive, it is healing. In therapy, it's often not the technique that transforms a person. It is the experience of sitting across from someone who does not flinch at your truth, who does not rush your process, who simply stays. Men, even those who seem stoic or closed off, carry this same longing. They too want to be seen without being judged. He may never say it out loud, but when he finds a woman who can offer that presence, he will return to her again and again. Not because of what she gives him externally, but because of how he feels in her emotional field. That kind of woman becomes more than a partner. She becomes a sanctuary, a place he remembers not just with his mind, but with his entire body. She becomes a still point in his world, and in that stillness, something sacred is born. Secret 6: Strategic Scarcity. Presence creates depth in the moment, but what happens after you leave? What remains when you are no longer physically near? This is where the psychology of scarcity begins to shape emotional memory. Scarcity, when used with integrity, becomes one of the most compelling layers of feminine energy. It is not about manipulation or withholding love. It is about not offering your presence as something endlessly available, expected, or routine. Psychologically, humans place more value on what they cannot fully have. We yearn for what feels rare. We treasure what is hard to reach. Carl Jung observed that the mind does not swing between truth and lies, but between meaning and absurdity. And in that movement, longing is born. Strategic scarcity is not about ignoring a man to make him chase. It is about being deeply present when you are there, and just as deeply absent when you are not. It is about living your life fully, even when someone wants access to you. If you are always available, always saying yes, always the first to respond, your presence becomes predictable. And what is predictable often fades into emotional background noise. Imagine this: you've planned your day yoga brunch with a friend reading a chapter of a book you love. He messages you, "Want to hang out now?" You might miss him, but instead of dropping everything, you respond calmly, "I'd love to see you. I'm free later today after 4. That sentence, though simple, carries weight. It communicates that your life does not pause for his desire. And in that gentle boundary, he feels something deeper than just interest. He feels respect. He sees that your time, like your attention, is not granted automatically. This is the emotional logic behind scarcity. It's not about withholding. It's about having your own rhythm and not bending it for every request. When a man realizes he can't always reach you, he begins to value the moments when he can. And when you let the silence stretch just a little longer, when you don't rush to respond, something interesting happens. He leans in. He begins to wonder. He questions. And in that space of uncertainty, a deeper emotional attachment forms. Behavioral psychology confirms this: people feel more emotionally invested when they exert effort. If everything is given easily and quickly, they don't form the same bond. When a woman is always initiating, always checking in, always making plans, the man has no room to show up. His instinct to invest, to contribute, to pursue, becomes dormant. Scarcity also invites unpredictability. You're not always available, not always online, not always ready. Not because you're playing games, but because you're living. Some days you're chatty. Other days you're immersed in your world: work, friendship, silence. That rhythm teaches him something essential: you are not a possession. You are a presence. One that visits, that chooses, not one that can be claimed on demand. Jung once said that what we fail to make conscious reappears in our lives as fate. For many women, abandonment trauma creates an unconscious urge to always prove presence, to be available, responsive, and accommodating. But in doing so, they erase their own emotional gravity. Strategic scarcity is not revenge against abandonment. It is a reclamation of space. A woman who embodies this doesn't disappear to cause pain. She simply doesn't let herself be absorbed. She knows how to protect her energy. She allows space to form so real connection can grow. She lets him come to her not out of arrogance, but out of balance. Because if he never reaches for her, he will never value her. And if he never wonders about her, he will never fully see her. Scarcity, when grounded in self-respect, doesn't repel love. It calls in only the kind that is strong enough to stay. Secret 7, giving him the opportunity to show up. When you stop offering yourself on demand, when you create emotional space, something begins to shift in him. He no longer feels entitled to your presence. He begins to notice its absence, and in that absence, his own desire has room to grow. This final layer of feminine energy is not about passivity. It's about creating space for a man to participate, to invest, and to reveal himself. Too often, relationships become imbalanced because one person carries the entire emotional weight. One person initiates every conversation, plans every meeting, holds the structure of the bond. But bonds formed this way rarely last because we only value what we've put energy into. In psychology, this is called the investment principle. The more effort someone exerts, the more meaning they assign to the connection. Carl Jung once wrote, "What you resist not only persists, it grows." That's why the instinct to give more when someone pulls away often backfires. It creates emotional imbalance, not closeness. A man does not connect more deeply because he receives more. He connects more deeply because he gives more. This doesn't mean you need to test him, demand effort, or withhold affection. It simply means you stop over-functioning in the relationship. You allow him to show you who he is, instead of constantly proving who you are. The woman who always arranges, accommodates, and anticipates every emotional shift in the relationship unintentionally blocks him from stepping forward. And men who cannot contribute emotionally never bond fully. A man needs to feel essential, not praised for nothing but appreciated for how he shows up. So what does this look like in daily life? It means you don't always initiate. You let the conversation die, sometimes not to punish, but to create room for him to revive it. It means you don't always say "I'm fine" when you're not. You allow yourself to receive care. To say "that was hard for me." To say "I could use some support." Not because you're weak, but because you trust that true connection includes both giving and receiving. When a man feels that he can protect you, comfort you, and support you, his attachment deepens. Not because you need saving, but because he feels valuable in your life. This is not about manipulation. It's about emotional balance. You offer something sacred when you allow him to contribute, to plan, to hold space, to meet your emotional presence with his own. And if he doesn't, then you learn something too. Because a man who feels no desire to invest is telling you everything you need to know. Attraction alone is never enough. Sustained emotional connection requires effort from both sides. And when a woman knows how to step back, just slightly, she gives him the opportunity to step in. Not all will, but the ones who do so with heart. And when he feels like a better version of himself in your presence, he'll stay. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. He won't remember every detail of what you said. He'll remember how he felt next to you. And he'll want to return to the woman who let him show up and made him proud of the man he became in the process. Conclusion. Feminine energy is not a technique nor a role to play. It is the expression of emotional integrity, self-mastery, and a deep relationship with your inner world. These 7 layers, from primal anima to strategic scarcity, are not tools to control others. They are reflections of a woman who has returned to herself, a woman who no longer performs to be loved, but chooses to love without losing herself. When you live from this place, you don't chase obsession. You become the kind of experience a man never forgets. Because you speak to something ancient in him, not with words but with presence, not with control but with your depth. You will not need to prove yourself. Because the woman who lives in alignment with her own soul doesn't try to be the one. She simply is. And that is the kind of woman the world and the masculine heart cannot help but remember. This is Philosoul, where the mirror shatters, and the man you were born to be takes his first step.
Thank you for watching. Walk your path with quiet strength.